right, so the recording has now begun. Welcome to Streamlining Communications with Email Templates. In this webinar, I'm actually going to discuss a few key features. The first thing that I'm going to talk about is organizing email templates within TigerPaw. Email templates are not strictly just a marketing thing. Email templates are actually found across the board within every aspect of TigerPaw, and in this webinar, you will see that happen. So you're going to have email templates that will be created for various different reasons, and we need to go ahead and make sure that we understand how we can get those organized. So the first thing we're going to do is talk about setting up an organizational structure that you'll be able to use when we go to create those email templates. Next, we're going to talk about crafting the email template within TigerPaw and the few different ways that we can do that. So we're going to talk about first organizing, then making your email template, so you will know how and where to go to make them. I'm going to discuss some internal versus external messaging recommendations. There's definitely some best practices that we can employ when working with internal messages versus external client-facing messages. And so we're going to kind of talk briefly about some of the best practices that I've come up with in using that particular feature set. And we're going to wrap up with kind of demonstrating the different ways that these email templates can be used through workflow, through marketing, and through one-off instances where you just need to send some generic email out to a client one at a time. So we're going to discuss how, now that we've organized and created these particular messages, how can we use them? So by the time that this webinar is over, you will be completely able to start crafting your own email templates, and you will be saving time in doing so. So let's go ahead and switch on over to TigerPaw, and we'll get started. All right. So here's TigerPaw, and where email templates are created are in the master tables. That's where they're made. So what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to go into the master tables. Now, you do have to have security rights to edit master tables in order to create email templates, but you don't have to have those rights in order to use them. So that's just something I want everyone to know. To get to master tables, we're going to go up to Edit, and we're going to choose Master Tables. The table maintenance window comes up, which is the back end of TigerPaw, where a lot of the drop-downs come from, where a lot of the email templates, of course, are created, just where a lot of setup takes place. About halfway down, you see this email node, and so we're going to go ahead and expand that. Now, within email, we have three folders. The first folder talks about literature packages. I do want to discuss what a literature package is, because a literature package comes into play when we're crafting one-off email templates. You will not be using a literature package to send an email from a workflow. It's not recommended. And you will not be using a literature package to send an email in mass marketing. That's not recommended either. So what a literature package is, it is a collection of attachments, all right? So what you do when you create a brand new literature package is you give that package a name, you give it a description, and then you add links to files. Now, they're links to files that are residing on your server, preferably in a shared folder that everybody has access to, so that no matter who is using this template, those files will pull correctly. And the reason that I stress the word links is because if you need to update that information, if you need to replace it with maybe 2014's product guide, you could do that very simply by just updating that document, and the link will still maintain. So they are links, but they are a way to add a collection of attachments onto an email. Again, best practice, don't use it for anything automated or in mass. This is very, very useful when creating templates that are intended to be used to streamline communication in one-off situations. So that is a literature package. Underneath literature package, we have a folder called email template categories. This is where the organizational structure really comes into play. Because you are going to be using email templates across your organization, one of the best and most practical uses of categories are by department. So you'll see here that I've actually added a number of categories. I have the accounting, emails that have to do with accounting, emails that have to do with administrative stuff. I have some email connector emails that I want to use. You organize this, think of a category as a folder, and you're organizing where all of your templates are. It becomes very, very easy to find it later. I have some organizations that actually give their reps their own folder so that the email templates that they create can easily be pulled in and used on their one-off interactions with clients. Sometimes I have customers that come in and put departments in there, like I have right here. And then sometimes people get even more specific and they start organizing it by these emails go to this campaign, these emails go to that campaign. So just think of an email template category as a folder. Very, 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 very easy to add. All that you have to do is click the New button with email template categories highlighted and type in the name of the new category. A question that just came in asking why the email connector is a department. The email connector can send emails back to the client when they receive information, and if you wanted to organize those emails separate from maybe your service emails, then that's why email connector is a department. However, it's not necessary. You really do organize this as if you would organize your My Documents folder on your computer. Just organize it in a way that makes sense to you and your organization. But this is how you, instead of just having a list of 500 email templates that you always have to go through, at least this way you can actually go to a folder and have a subset in there. So before you really start diving in and using the email templates aggressively, you want to go and make sure that the categories make sense for your organization. And know that you can always go into these categories and you can add more if you need to. So once you've added all of the categories, you'll see that when you expand the email templates node, which is the last and final file within the email section, all of those categories are mirrored within the email templates section. Because like I said, these are folders. These are organizational folders. So that's where the organization comes into play. Does anybody have any questions? You can type them into the question section and go to webinar, or you can raise your hand and I can unmute you and you can ask your question. But does anybody have any questions on literature packages or template categories? Okay, let me get a raise of hands then. How many of you currently have organized your template categories by department? Raise your hand. Okay. Perfect. All right, not bad. How many of you have chosen to organize your email templates by rep name or individual? Okay. Cool, that's good. And how many of you have decided to organize it in some other way? Okay. And if you wouldn't mind, Stephanie, if you want to type into the question box like how you decided to do it, I'd love to hear that. That would be awesome. I'm always looking for new organizational ways to share with people. Yes, and they can be moved from different folders. Ann asked a really good question. Can they be moved from folder to folder? Yes, they can, and we'll get into that. We'll show you that. And Stephanie, okay, cool. They're a tech company, so we organize them into tasks and invoices and projects. That's a really good idea as well. So as you can see, organizing them is easy. It's as easy as creating categories. The emails that you end up creating can be moved from category to category if necessary. Categories can evolve. They can be deleted. They can be added as you go. And they are definitely very powerful in organizing your emails. And I know a lot of you haven't even started using this yet, which I'm really glad that you're in this webinar because now you can actually start off using it correctly and you'll understand how you organize them. Awesome. Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. All right. Let's go ahead and talk now about crafting an email template. There's a few different ways that we can go about doing this. The first thing that we're going to want to do, though, is we're going to want to determine what folder we're going to put this email template into. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to click on the sales folder over here. And I'm going to go up to the new button on the top, toolbar of table maintenance. And it's actually going to go ahead and open up a new TigerPaw HTML email editor. Now I can start crafting my message, but before I do that, the first thing I need to do is give this template a name. By giving this template a name, I'm actually separating it and distinguishing it from all of the other templates within my database. So let's go ahead and I'm going to just name this call to action, all right? So I'm just naming it that because this is what I want to do. This is going to end up being a one-off email that I send to my clients after I make a phone call with them. I'm in sales. Now you determine what category. So here are those categories again. This is where you put them into the folder. So I'm actually going to scroll down and I'm going to select sales to put this particular email template into the sales category. And to further explain your question, all that you have to do to change that is reopen up this template and change its category. So you can move them from category to category if you need to. And you can always come back into a template and change its name by changing its template name up here. And if you want to, you can export this into an HTML format. There's no duplicate feature. Ann asked if there was a duplicate feature. There's no duplicate feature, but what you can do is you can export it and then import it in, or you can just copy and paste the HTML code when you go to create the new one. So there's some ways around that. The subject line is the very first line that the customer will see. So in this case, I think I'm just going to give it something relatively generic. I'm going to say, it was nice. No, I think maybe I'll just say thank you for speak with me. All right. And then I can come down, and the first type of editor that we have available is called the WYSIWYG editor. What you see is what you get. This is basic formatting. Everything about this should be relatively familiar to anybody that's used Word. You can start by typing your message. Dear customer, thank you for taking the time to talk with me today. Kindly. And then you can put your signature. Now, we can edit this if we need to. If we want to make thank you bold, we can easily do that by highlighting the text in this formatting bar, going ahead and making it bold. Maybe we want to make thank you blue for some reason. We can definitely do that. Maybe we want to make today italicized. Now, this is not the recommended type of email that you would want to send to a client, but I want to show you the functionality of the HTML email editor first. You know, maybe we want to go ahead and underline the word talk. So all of this is pretty straightforward. It's all here. If we wanted to bullet it, we could definitely number, or we could bullet. So we have that. We can justify, center, left, or right, and left. We can indent, in, out. We have full editing capabilities here. If I wanted to change the font, I can change the font to any of the different fonts that I may have in my system. If I wanted to change the point size, I can change the point size. Now, you wouldn't want to say, dear customer. No, you wouldn't want to do that. Instead, what you would really want to do is you would probably want to make this more personalized. So TigerPaw has what's called tokens that can be added into an email template. Tokens range from anything from the customer's first name to your rep's email signature, as defined within rep settings. So I'm going to go ahead and start off by actually personalizing this with some tokens. Now, above the formatting bar, we have kind of the utility bar, is what I call that. And in the utility bar, we have an icon that looks like a database with a spreadsheet behind it. And the pop-up says email tokens. So if I click on that, this will fly out from the right side. And these are all of the tokens that I have available to me within TigerPaw. Now we've organized the tokens by category. So we have a number of different categories, different aspects of the system, and each one of these aspects of the system actually has a different set of criteria, a different set of tokens. So if I come down and I say contact information, then I have things like their first name. To add a token into an email template, all you do is place the cursor where you would like the token to be added, and you double-click on the token itself. The token will then be inputted into the email template. So I wanted that, and then I also want to go ahead and add my rep information. So I'm going to go to the rep information category, and I am going to add my email signature. Now this email signature is actually created within your rep settings. And when we get done with creating this email template, I'll show you where you can go create that. And a best practice in crafting an email signature actually is to craft it in a blank HTML editor, just like we have here. Type it up, edit it, change it. If you need some bolded, if you need the colors changed, craft it here, and then copy and paste the HTML code into your rep settings, because in your rep settings you have to have the HTML code in there. So that's a best practice. I do want to put kind of a highlight, a note against that. When you're creating your rep signatures, create them as in this email template thing. Don't save that particular email template. You're just basically doing it to get the HTML code. And then copy and paste the code over to your rep settings so that everything is good on that front. Otherwise, you can get the HTML code from other programs as well. So those are tokens. Now, if you are marketing, if this was going to be a mass marketing sort of an email, and you had email analytics set up, then you would want to make sure that you always add a few tokens. If email analytics was set up, which it's not in this particular case because this is just a test database, but if email analytics was set up, then what you would want to do is you would want to add the tracking token to the bottom of the email, and you would probably want to add an unsubscribed or opt-out token. Those are the two tokens that you would want to make sure are in every marketing-based email. But since this is just a one-off email, I'm not going to do that at this time. When you're done working with tokens, you can simply click on the email tokens button again, and it will go away. If you're wondering, can I add pictures to my emails, you definitely can. We have in the formatting bar, we have an ability to add a picture. We also have an ability to add hyperlinks. So all of that capabilities are built into this. Best practice when adding a picture is to use a source URL. Do not just use a local file, even though we have that option. Because if you're not the one sending the email, if this template is intended to be used by others, and they don't have that file in that place, then it won't go out right. You'll get a non-display when you send it. But if you use an internet URL, everybody can point to that, and the image will display. And same with adding a link. If you wanted to go ahead and make something a link, you could highlight the text that you want to make a link. You could click on the hyperlink button. Here is what was highlighted. Here is your URL. Maybe I wanted to go to Google or something. And I have made a link. So you can edit. What you see is what you get right here. Now, had a question that came in that talked about what's going on down here. This is actually the structure of the email in HTML format. So we have the body and we have the paragraph. Now really where this comes into play is when you go into the HTML edit mode, which is the second way that we can craft emails within TigerPaw. When I click on that, you actually are presented with strictly the code. So what I could do is, of course, if I wanted to do an HTML email signature and tie it to my account, to my rep information. I could craft that, go to the HTML edit mode, and copy and paste the code over into my rep settings. That's definitely something that we could do. Also, though, where this comes into play is if you want to go ahead and actually just code it out, you can. But typically, some of you may be using like InDesign or Constant Contact or other email template generating tools. And if you're using those and you would like to bring them into TigerPaw so that you could add those custom database tokens, all you have to do is copy the HTML code that is produced from that other software application, and you paste it into this HTML page. And when you do that, you can then click on this final button, which is the preview mode, which you can't edit in the preview mode, but you can see how everything looks. It'll take the code into consideration, so you can make sure that everything is looking the way that you had intended, or that everything looks the way that it did when it was in the other application. If you go back to the what you see is what you get mode and you do the whole copy and paste thing with HTML code, it should display accurately here, and you can go in there then and you can actually add the tokens where you need the tokens added. Again, by placing the cursor where you want that token and double-clicking on the token from the token menu, which you get to by clicking Email Tokens right up here on the utility bar. And remember, you have a lot of options on which to grab information. We also have a function if you crafted a letter in Word and you had basic formatting, bold, underline, italicize, colored text, so on and so forth. Some basic formatting. If you copy and paste that from Word, you can actually maintain all of that formatting by using this button right here. If you paste the content that you copied from Microsoft Word and you use this button, it will actually bring everything over right. So if I was going to demonstrate that, I would simply highlight this text. I'll open up Word. I'll go in here. I'll paste that in. Maybe I actually want that to be red, and maybe I want today to be bigger, and maybe I want, talk to be green. If I edited this out, and if I wanted to, I could control copy, and if I came back here, I'll just add it underneath here for demonstration purposes, place the cursor where I'd like to paste the text, and I click on this button right here, and it brings everything in. It brings it in the way that I had it in Word. And that works with basic formatting. When you start to get into columns and text boxes and images and other things, it starts to get a little bit wonky. So I do want to make sure that you understand that. But if you craft a letter in Word and you use basic formatting and everything looks nice and you're comfortable in Word, there's no reason why you can't use Word and then copy and paste it over. Just because Word actually saves formatting in a little bit of a different way, we have to use this function to clean it up when it comes in. All right. So other than the questions that have been asked as I've gone and that I've been able to answer, does anybody have any questions on the different ways of crafting an email template within TigerPaw? Whether it's from within this tool itself, copy and pasting over from Word, or bringing the code from an external application that you've crafted an email in, bringing that code over into the HTML edit code view, and then coming into the what you see is what you get to add your tokens. And on top of that, does anybody have any questions about selecting a category? Does everybody remember what a category is? Who here knows what the categories are used for, remembers what the categories are used for? Go ahead and raise your hand if you remember what the categories help you with. Perfect. Okay, good. Does anybody have any questions on creating an email? Does anybody think that they can't do it? You type in either a question to the question box or raise your hand if you think you cannot create an email template with this knowledge. Okay. Then on the other side of the coin, how many of you now feel comfortable crafting your messages? Awesome. That's what I like to see. Thanks, guys. All right. So far we've talked about organizing the email templates. We've talked about crafting those messages and the different ways that we can do that. Let's go ahead and, I do want to pull out one best practice before I leave this topic. It's a very important best practice, and I think that people need to realize it. And I would, for all of you that are newer in doing this, at first you may wonder why, but then you'll get it. So my best practice for crafting any email template is to use under tokens the company information section religiously. If you want to say your company's name, use a token. If you want to say your company's primary email address or your company's full address or your postal code or your phone number, use a token. Can anybody identify before I tell you why that is a best practice? You can type into the question box why you think using the company information anytime that you want to use that information is a good idea. Yes, branding, right. If it changes, it will automatically update, correct. In case it changes, yes. Save time and it might change. Change data once, yes. You are all 100% correct. After, you're going to be creating a lot of email templates, and if your company, if your name changes, if you're bought out, if you merge with someone, or if your address changes, you move offices, you grow out of the office that you're in, if your phone number changes, if your email changes, do you really want to go through 25 to 100 or however many email templates that you have to make those changes? No. So if you use the tokens for company information, you change it in the options settings, and it will be on all new emails right away. So that is correct, and I am glad that everybody understands that, and I do hope that people utilize that going forward. All right. So now that we've talked about organizing and creating an email template, I do want to talk a little bit about some messaging recommendations. Now, we have a document online that talks about mass marketing and some things that you may want to consider when crafting messages for that forum. So I'm not going to go through that in detail. It's on our website at the end of the session when I go through the resources that you can review to kind of beef up your knowledge on this topic. I'll call that out. I'll show you where that is. But there are some simple things that I've found can really, really help when crafting email messages. So first of all, I want to talk about internal emails. So some of these email templates are going to be used in what's called a workflow. A workflow is basically an automatic notification sent to employees and can be also sent to customers when something happens within the database. It's triggered by an action in the database. And when that happens, you have two options of notification, an email or a pop-up. So if you're going to use an email for a notification, you need to craft that email template. And then if that email is going to be sent to someone internal, then there are some things that we can do to make it a little bit more effective. First of all, it's best to keep internal notifications short and to the point. The purpose that people want to send these notifications out is typically because the person is not in the office. So 9 out of 10 times they're going to be receiving this message on their phone. Do you want it to be a novel? No. Short and to the point. What is the purpose of this message, this notification? Also, if it's internal, and this is something that I don't think anyone's really heard of before, but if it's internal, it may be in your best interest to put in the template name, maybe in smaller font, at the bottom of the email. So this is call to action, and it's triggered by this workflow. So put in the name of the template and also put in the workflow you intend to use this email template for. Why? Well, because sometimes with workflows, people get multiple messages. Sometimes with workflows, when you turn them on for the first time, people get notifications that they don't need nor do they want. And the best way to figure out where those notifications are coming from is to look at the notification itself. So if the notification is an email, there's no way of knowing what exact workflow sent that to John, for example. But if it said this at the bottom, then you would know. So this is actually something that I recommend everybody employ for internal communications that will be used in workflow notifications. Put in the template name and put in the workflow that you intend to use it on. Or if this is going to be used on multiple workflows, put like a series, like say in this series of workflows. That way you can resolve issues right away. You don't have to shut off workflows to figure out what's going on, and you can make changes and modifications instantly. Now, this is a relatively new best practice, so I want to make sure that it makes sense. So if everybody wouldn't mind raising their hands just to let me know, A, does that make sense? And so let's see what hands come up for that. Sweet. Okay, good. And now I'm going to lower everyone's hands, and the next hand raises that I want are, is that something that you think you would like to do? Is this something that, okay, good. Then I'm going to make it an official best practice because I think that it helps quite a lot to identify where emails are coming from and what is being triggered by them. All right. I do have a question that came in. If we use TigerPaw to send out mass emails, do we have a danger of being blacklisted as a spammer? Only if you sent them out wrong. You always have a danger of that when you send out anything in mass, but as long as you send them out correctly, you won't have that problem. To learn a little bit more about the proper ways that we can go ahead and get emails sent out through TigerPaw without having to worry about that, I do recommend hopping into our marketing quick start. You can throttle how many emails go out per hour, and that is usually the key to be not labeled as a spammer. And with the email analytics information, as long as you have an unsubscribe and or an opt-out token, then you won't have to worry about that as well. So I would hop into a marketing quick start to learn a little bit more about the processes around that. But of course, you won't really have to worry about it as long as you are doing everything right. All right. So that's my best practice with internal messages that are going to be utilized within workflows. When we're talking about emails that are going to go out to clients, things get a little bit different. Now, these messages can be more robust, and you can format them out. So whereas with an internal message, if you use rich text formatting, it's very basic. Otherwise, maybe just text is fine. With an email that you want to be sending out to a client, maybe you want to brand it a little bit with your colors, or you want to do some things. So rich text formatting would be okay. Be friendly, be robust, be to the point as well. Anything that you're sending them is something that you want to make sure they get the call to action, they get the why you're sending that out right away. With marketing, you're going to want to put that call to action. You want them to do something. The other uses for client-facing emails would be for follow-ups to services, right? So if you conduct a service or a service order is closed, you can have a workflow send out a client-facing email that says, thank you for your service. This service order was closed. Please take a moment to tell us how we did, and maybe include some sort of a link to a Survey Gizmo or SurveyMonkey survey that you can then make sure that your customers are happy. But you just, the structure of that particular email, you just want to remember that this is going to be client-facing. And the HTML formatting really comes into play in making it friendly. For marketing emails, you do want to make sure that you add the email analytics tokens, the tracking and unsubscribe opt-out tokens. A, because the tracking token will help you get the information that you want, and B, because the opt-out unsubscribe is necessary for anything like that. And there has been code built behind those tokens that if a client clicks on that or if a prospect clicks on that, then it'll go back into TigerPaw and put a check mark in the Do Not Email flag. So you want to make sure that you're adding those tokens. Okay. So client-facing, you're going to add a call to action, whether that's a take a survey or call today or something along those lines. You want to make sure that you follow the some of the guidelines that I will show you. I have a document that I'm going to link to at the end of the session that you can kind of review the top 15 things to think about when crafting marketing messages and sending them out. You do want to keep it a little bit shorter, even though it can be formatted. It is going to be showing up on more and more phones, so maybe going the super graphic intensive way might not be the best option. And make sure that you are asking them to do something that is measurable, adding in all of the tokens that will allow you to track but also keep you out of the blacklist area. When we talk about internal emails, we're talking about short, to the point, and adding a little note, what workflow and what email template did this come from, so that if you need to change anything or you need to troubleshoot anything, it's very, very easy to do so. Does anybody have any questions on email messaging recommendations? Did somebody learn something? Raise your hand if you feel like you learned something about crafting an email message from that segment of this webinar. Good. My goal is to teach people new things. Good question, Terry. Does HTML format help or hurt phones? Depends on the phone. I mean, my iPhone displays HTML text, so if I open up an email on my iPhone, it looks great. Android does too. But if I opened up an email on a phone that maybe is just text, then it's going to just dumb it down into text anyways. And sometimes what it'll do is it'll add the HTML code in there. So you really have to kind of understand who your audience is. I think HTML, basic HTML formatting is probably okay for phones at this point in a in smartphones adoption. I think it's probably okay. So I don't think there's anything crazy with it. But if you're worried at all, you can always come up to the format option right up here, and you can change it to plain text. And of course, that would be just text, but that's what it would be. All right, so the last section of this webinar is actually going to be discussed, okay, now that we've created all of this, we're going to go ahead and save that call to action email template. Now let's learn a little bit more about how to implement this into your day-to-day business, right? So what different ways can an email template be used within TigerPaw? So the first thing is marketing, right? Everyone defaults to marketing, so let's just get that out of the way first. An email template that you make for purposes of marketing needs to be rolled up into something called an activity. Activities are actually displayed right up here where it says activities and campaigns within table maintenance. This is where all of your activities are. You have an activity and you have a campaign. The only difference between these is that the building blocks are the activities, and if your marketing scheme, if your marketing plan is to send multiple emails, that's called a campaign, then you're going to create every single step, every single email will get its own activity, and then you string them together with campaigns. For more in-depth information on how to create activities and how to create campaigns, hop into our next Marketing Quick Start where we cover that. But what I'm going to focus on is I'm just going to open up a brand new activity. I'm going to give that activity a name. So in this case, I'm going to say call to action just to match up with that. And even though I would want to put a more precise description, maybe some more instructions on why I'm making this, I'm just going to copy and paste that because it does need to be there in order to save the activity. An activity can do a lot of different things. It can adjust profiles and types and statuses, and it can adjust groups that clients are in. We do discuss groups and profiles and all of that in depth in the Marketing Quick Start. But what it can do is it can also do up to 3 actions simultaneously. It can create mail merge data, send an email, or schedule a task. I said or, but I really could say and, because you can actually have it do any of those, any combination of those three things. I'm just going to focus for the purposes of this webinar on the send an email option. So if we're going to send an email, we're going to go to the email tab, and this is where you can select an email template. So you click on that button, and then from the category, you choose the category where you place the email template that you made. There's my call to action. I simply double click on that, and it will now be added into this activity. Now it's important to note that you could just add, just strict text down here, but nobody really does that anymore. You want to start with an email template, and you add the template here. Now, the next thing that you have to do is you skip all the way down to the bottom, and there should be a line here. There really should be a line here, because a lot of people think, oh, if I add the email template, then I'm done. And you're not, because you have to tell, and you can tell the activity who to send it on behalf of. And so if you have the rep signature as a token within that email template, then it's going to try to pull from a rep. But if you don't have a rep selected here, it won't know who to pull from, so it will actually just show up blank. So you can either set primary account rep, the rep scheduling the activity. The primary account rep is TigerPaw is going to look at the account that the contact this is going out to is in, and then look at the rep and pull their signature in. Or you can actually choose an individual from this list of who you want it to look like it's coming from. So you do have to make sure that you send that down there. And some of you may be wondering what ignored the do not email flag means. And all that means is if you had to send out an emergency message, or if you had to send out some sort of a recall on products, then even people that may not want to get solicitation from you, so they click the unsubscribe or opt out when you were emailing them, and now it's checked on their email address. But if you need to get them this information, then it will ignore that. But that should only be used in situations like that. So that's how you use an email template. That is the email template, how you use an email template in an activity. And I did get a question, what is a house account on the rep list? Well, that's a rep that I made called house account. So what you can do is you can make what's called a public rep in TigerPaw. It's a user, technically, called house account. Now, no one's going to sign in as house account, but what that allows you to do is assign prospects to a house account, and then as sales reps adopt them, they'll change it to their name. So that's what we use house account for. And then the next question that we have is, will the on behalf of rep option use their signature? If in the email template you add the rep signature token I talked about when crafting email messages, yes, it will. Good questions. So this is how you use email templates in marketing. You add them to activities. Okay. Again, to learn more information on activities, how to make them, what they do, how you can make campaigns out of activities, how to schedule them, how to send them out, our Marketing Quick Start is really where you want to go for that. So that is definitely one way to use email templates. Another way that email templates are used in TigerPaw are through workflows. Now, we've touched on that throughout this webinar, but I do want to talk a little bit about how to set that up. So if you come down here to a workflow, and I have workflow event definitions, these are all of the workflows that I have created. I'll just open one. In this case, when a quote is converted to a service order, someone is going to get an email. So this is where the internal communications come into play. You have a workflow. The parameters tab allows you to set up and establish what is going to trigger that notification. And we did do we did a webinar last week on conditional workflows. It's on our live webinar recordings page on our website. Go check that out. Watch that. We also have a Creating Conditional Workflows video in our videos and guides section on our website, and that will show you how to craft it, and it'll basically walk you through this entire process. So I do recommend utilizing those two resources. But on the Parameters tab, you set up what's going to cause the notification to fire. And then on the Dynamic Recipients, and on the Recipients tab, Dynamic, Static, Recipient Groups, and External Recipients, that's where you actually will select the notification style. And a workflow can do one of two things. It can actually go ahead and do a pop-up on the screen for those of you that may be using TigerPaw in the office, or it can automatically send an email template out. So if you crafted the email template like I outlined earlier in this webinar, then you simply come in here, you find the rep that you want to send the email to, you click on this button over here to choose an email template. Choose the category, again going back to the beginning, why categories are so important, and then you can go ahead and add that particular email to this workflow. Now notice that a workflow can do both a pop-up and an email template. That may be suitable for a lot of you, because the pop-ups not only just pop up, they also are added to a workflow list. And that workflow list can be used as kind of like a to-do list. Check this out, look at this, do this, and then complete it. So if you wanted both of those to happen, you could have both of those happen. When we talk about static recipients and recipient groups, it's the same concept. Dynamic recipients will change depending on the situation and the document that is triggering the workflow. Static recipients and recipient groups don't change. The interface does look a little bit different, but it's the same concept. All we need to do, if we want to pop up, we click on the ellipsis and we type in that information. If we want to use an email template, we click on the ellipsis over here. We select the email template that we want to choose, again, selecting that. And now we have that added. So when this triggers, it looks like Beth will get an email, the call to action email that we created earlier in this webinar. These priorities tie into the notification text and the list of to-dos that I talked about, so that you can organize your list by priority, maybe sort it by priority and go through the important ones first and the other ones second and all of that. For more information on that, again, check out our guides and check out the training video as well as the webinar. But these are where that's going to come into play. Now, workflows can also do something called external recipient notification, which means workflows can send out a notification to a client if they're triggered. Now, this is where they don't get a pop-up, so all you have are email templates, but you add them in much the same way. So when a service order is closed, you want the customer on that service order to get, that particular follow-up email, then you could easily just find that email and add it to this, and then they would get that email. Now, depending on how many service orders are opened and closed for you on a daily basis, you may not want to do that, or you may want to have a status that's dedicated to just triggering a email and a status that's dedicated to not, so that you can control how often your clients get those emails. So that's just a best practice on that front, but know that it is possible and you can do it. And that is how your email templates are used from an internal and external automatic notification standpoint. And I have a question here. Can it also send an email to the customer when a service order is opened with the SO number? Yes, it can. So when you watch the video on how to create these workflows, the trigger on that would be an open service order, and then it can automatically send an email to the client that has the SO number and all of that information. You just have to craft that email template with the appropriate tokens. Good question. All right. So far we've talked about marketing through activities. That's one use of email templates that we've created and how you can implement that in your business. We've talked about workflows, internal versus external, and where those come into play and how to add those to your business. Now, the last thing that we want to talk about is those one-off emails, right? So email templates are also used for individuals to just save them some time. So in order to utilize that, it's really straightforward. Let me go ahead and just search for an account. I'm going to search for One Stop Dental. I'm going to open that up. All that someone would have to do is highlight the name of the person that they would want to go ahead and send that email to. Using either this button right up here or this button over on the vertical toolbar, it all does the same thing. It's going to open up the email editor to send an email straight out of TigerPaw. And then what you can do is you can easily come up here to this button right here to choose an email template. I would simply find the category that I would need to go here, so sales. There's my call to action. You know what, let's say that I really like the call to action. I'm going to be using that a lot. I can easily add that as a favorite, and then I can go ahead and click on OK. So that brought over that. Notice it said Dear Lauren. Why did it say Dear Lauren? Oh, because I had Lauren's name highlighted, so that token worked. And then because I actually have my signature in my rep settings says James Foxall, look, it brought over that too. So all the information came over from a token standpoint. My links work, the color is there, everything is there. But why did I add that as a favorite? What does that save me? Well, let's go ahead and just let me demonstrate. I'm going to exit out of this. Let's say I want to send an email to James. I'm going to click on that button. I don't have to go to email templates anymore. From this drop-down, that call to action is listed there. These are my favorites. And I can just instantly bring that up. Favorites are separate for each and every rep. So those are tied to the signed-in rep. So all I have to do is click on send, and it will send that out. Okay. And it won't. My TigerPaw Outlook Journal connector isn't going to actually find a match on that, so it won't do anything. But typically, what that would do is it would analyze and it would update the journal and do all of that. So now everything, all the point of communication has been logged. So that is how easy it is using those templates to simply get some information out. Instead of having to type all of that up, imagine after a salesperson gets off a call, they can just send the product information out, or they can send a thank you email out just like that quickly. I think they could get on the next call faster, which of course would increase productivity and potential sales opportunities. Or a service tech after they close a service order, if they want to go ahead and send out a one-off email. They can easily do that with the template without having to worry about wasting time. They can get on their next call quicker. So using templates in that way is very easy. It's efficient. Can you preview the email before it's sent? Well, this is what the email is going to look like. So that would be preview. I mean, if I selected that drop down or whatever, this is what it would look like to them. Of course, the tokens would be filled in appropriately if it actually had that in there. Some of those tokens don't work right now because of my environment. But if I do that, see, it brought in the information that it needs to bring in. Those tokens were working effectively. So this would be what it looks like when it goes into the client's email. Now, one thing that I will bring up, since you brought up that, if you are crafting the email template, which I'm going to go back to really quick, if you're crafting the email template and you want to send a test email, you can send a test email to yourself if you need to by using this button right up here. So I did want to call that out. Is it possible to choose the source of the email if you have two email accounts and only one uses MS Outlook and the other uses Outlook 365? That's actually a really good question. I'm going to have to get back to you on that. I do not believe so, but I don't want to say no without doing some research. So at the end of this session, shoot me an email with that. I'll forward it to our IT director, and I'll get an answer from him. So that is how easy it is to employ that. Now, before we go to the final slide and I talk about what we discussed, I do want to talk about signatures. I think they're really important. So what you're going to want to do is if you go to Edit, Master Tables, if you go down to Rep, and you go to Account Reps, these are all of the account reps in your system. You can go through and you can add their signatures in here. You just go to the Email Configuration tab. You have plain text signature and you have HTML. You have to copy HTML code into there, so you get that code from the way that I recommended, or you can get that code from any other source, and then you copy and paste it into here. But that's where those tokens are pulling from, so you want to make sure you fill that out. If you're not an administrator or you don't have full access to the master tables, then you can get to your rep settings and your signature by going to Status and Setup and clicking on My Settings. That will actually open this up for anybody, and so you can go to the email configuration and you can add that in here. Notice I had James Foxall down here, which is why that was popping up automatically when I said I wanted to use my email signature. So all that you have to do is go down to Status and Setup, click on My Settings, and go to the email configuration, and you copy and paste the HTML code. That code it's full HTML code. So if that code has a hyperlink, if that code has an image, if that code has any of that, yes, it will show up. It won't show up in here. It'll show up as strict code. But if you craft that with graphics and hyperlinks in a different program or whatever, maybe even in the HTML editor that TigerPaw has, and then you copy and paste that code into here, it will all work. Yep. So that's where those signatures come from. So that is how you can use this in your day-to-day business. So to kind of cover some things, we talked about organizing email templates through categories. Think of them as folders. Then we talked about crafting an email template within TigerPaw, using the what you see is what you get, copying over from Word, creating it in an external HTML editing application, and copying the HTML code in. We talked about adding tokens and why they're important. We talked about the formatting options that we have. Then we talked about internal versus external messaging recommendations. Internal messages that are going to be sent from workflows should probably have a little note on what workflow you intend on using them for so that you know where that came from. They should be short, to the point, simple formatting, if not text only. External messages to clients, should be short, to the point, should have a call to action, and can be formatted nicely. Keep in mind that you will have people reading those on their phones. Then we talked about implementing the templates into your business, adding them to activities to get them out the door from a marketing perspective, adding them to workflows to automate some of those, and then the one-off options, and adding them to your favorites so that you can easily identify and grab them. So let's go to our website real quick so I can show you some of the resources that you have available to you when we want to go ahead and focus on some of this stuff. So you're going to go to our website. You're going to click on My TigerPaw. Your My TigerPaw is going to look like this. Then we're going to want to go to Videos and Guides, or you can get from the drop-down. You're going to come down to Videos and Guides. If you scroll down here, the User Conference and Training handouts, we actually have some information on here on workflows. So you're going to want to take a look at that. From the marketing section, we have a lot of videos on setting up email analytics, email templates, quick reference guides, how to create those, and how to craft them, and all of that. So we have all of those resources right there. And then under workflow notifications, we have how to create those workflows that I talked about there. So every aspect of what we talked about is covered in these videos. Secondly, if you come up to the training section and you go down to live webinar recordings, we did do a Creating Conditional Workflows webinar on the 8th. So you can go and you can watch that as well. So keep that in mind. And that's where that is. And then finally, if you come to our training calendar, we do have the Customer Marketing Quick Start on the 16th that you're going to want to probably attend if you want more in-depth information on the marketing aspect and how all of the activities and campaigns and how to trigger them and how to get those out and all of that. But we have a lot of other classes I do hope that you take a look at. So thank you for staying for my Streamlining Communications with Email Templates webinar. My name is Tony Maynor. I work in the Training and Implementation Department here. You will hear me on a lot of these webinars, so I may not be new to most of you. I do thank you for continuing to support these webinars. If you have any questions or if I've asked you to email me something, go ahead and there's my email address on the screen, so go ahead and send that my way. And I hope to see all of you in a future session. Thank you very, very much.